everyone, and welcome to the Wright Perspective. Are you following this podcast? Have you subscribed? If not, now is the perfect time. Just do it immediately, right this second. We need you to like, share, and subscribe on any and every platform that you use to engage with us. Today, we are going to recap and review a movie that is quite appropriate for this Halloween season and well known for its cult following. And it's also the first horror film to ever be reviewed on the Wright Perspective Podcast, the Rocky Horror Picture Show. This film, released in 1975, is a musical comedy horror film written by Richard O'Brien and Jim Sharman. And the screenplay was actually based on the 1973 musical stage production of the same name. And the music, books, and lyrics for the original stage production were by Richard O'Brien. The film ultimately ended up making $226 million on a budget of $1.4 million. And, it didn't really fare well during its initial release in 1975. But it developed a cult following in 1976 at the Waverly Theater in New York, where they ran the movie regularly at midnight. And audience participation, costumes, shadow casting, all of that stuff started happening organically. And that is when the film started to pick up steam. By the end of 1979, there were twice weekly showings at over 230 theaters, many with dedicated performance troupes, especially in LA and New York. To this day, the movie is shown year-round around the country. Annual Rocky Horror conventions are held in varying locations. They last days. There's even an international fan club.
I don't think that Rocky Horror Picture Show is our first horror. Didn't we do Silence of the Lambs?
Did we do Silence of the Lambs?
Well, I think we did, because that was the only reason I watched that movie.
That's the only reason I would watch it.
Well, this is not our first. No, Silence of the Lambs is definitely a horror movie.
Skylar really appreciates this point.
That's
Thank
right.
you, baby, for the
and this is Skylar's debut on the Wright Perspective.
Everybody, you're going to meet today my daughter. Every time I say I have a daughter, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. But I have to pick her up or we're not going to be able to proceed.
Okay.
Okay, everyone. If you usually just listen to our podcast,
girl, you got some jazzy sleeves, girl.
If you usually listen to our podcast, this is an episode where you want to kind of check out the video for at least a few minutes. Because in addition to the fact that my daughter Skylar is on, say hi, everybody. And
she's
y'all
looking at you like, what
I
does
know.
she have
I
on?
put the wig on in front of her, okay? Because I didn't want her to be surprised, And y'all, when I tell you she started cracking up laughing, and it was not laughing with me. It was laughing at me. Clearly, she was laughing at me.
She was like, oh, Mom, what you going
What
through?
are you doing? It's not good. And since we've already started to talk about it, we are dressed in costume, you all, for this one. We actually dressed up for the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And we actually also all went to go and see live showings of it in our respective cities.
Now, does Skylar have a character or is she just in the general vibe?
She's in the cast.
She is in the general vibe.
The general vibe of the
yes.
Gotcha.
Yes. I wanted to, I didn't spend any money on Skylar's costume. She already had a little onesie with the little spider web.
You spent money on your costume?
Oh, yes, I did. I bought.
You don't just have that red wig.
She has to overachieve in everything. She has to overachieve in everything.
Yeah, I bought this maid costume and this bright red lipstick, also something I don't normally have. And yes, I have on false eyelashes for the first time in my life. Okay. And which took me 35 hours to put on. I don't know how people do that on a daily basis.
So we were supposed to record yesterday, but she's been putting on her eyelashes since yesterday.
And then this gigantic red wig. Okay. Because I'm the character Magenta. Okay. Skylar is a member of the convention. She's a General Transylvanian.
Okay.
What about y'all? Did y'all spend money on your costumes?
I did not spend money on my costume. I decided to.
It's so perfect, bro. It's so perfect.
Pull things together, and I even had my Cuban cigar holder. So
wait, tell everybody what character you are.
So I am the criminologist
Yeah.
Bro, you hit it. You hit
Did a
it.
great
You
job.
hit it out the park, bro.
Listen,
Sis, what about you?
I'm Frank-N-Furter. Wait, what's his name?
That's
How you
it.
say his name?
That's it. Dr.
I'm
Frank-N-Furter.
Dr. Frank-N-Furter.
Dr. Frank-N-Furter.
That is who I am. Why? Because
of course you gotta be the main character.
Of course she does.
Well, actually, I wasn't thinking about that, but now that you say it,
Okay, I'm sorry, my fault.
it's on point. It's on par with who I am. Hello world. And but no, it was simply because I knew Jedi was like, let's dress up, and I was like, oh no, and then I said everything was going to be doing too much, and I said, I have a strapless top that has some ties on it.
And
I'll be Frank-N-Furter.
I think you're hitting the nail, and your makeup looks great.
And then I said, I own makeup from doing modeling. I was like, I can make this happen. Let's go.
And you made it happen.
You did, girl. You
that
look
is the only reason why I am Frank-N-Furter. Dr. Frank-N-Furter.
You look good. You look good. And I will tell you, I don't know what I'm going to do with this red wig after this, but I will find another occasion to use it. Okay. It wasn't the cheapest wig on Amazon. Okay. It was the one that just looked the most like the character. So, you know, even this lipstick. Normally I don't really wear lipstick. I kind of just use Carmex, you know? And so even just spending money on lipstick, I was like, what? I need to find a reason to wear this again. Lipstick is expensive. Who knew?
You just ain't getting the right lipstick.
I guess not. Because I was like, what? But anyway, so you all, as you can see, we've done our part to kind of get into the spirit of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And, you know, there was actually, and again, I think I mentioned there's an international fan club. Okay. So what we're doing right now, dressing up, getting into the spirit of it. There are people who do this all the time. In 2016, Fox actually aired a remake. Did you all know this, that there was a remake done?
No, I didn't know that.
Yes, it starred Laverne Cox as Dr. Frank-N-Furter.
Oh, I know she killed it.
Oh, of course.
I know she killed it.
Of course.
So did you read the reviews? Like, was it accepted? Or
I didn't read the reviews of it. You know, I pulled it up. I didn't have time to watch it.
Okay.
But you can get it's on Amazon.
Yeah, I wonder if it's accepted by the Rocky Horror community, or if it's something that everybody's like, no, you're not.
Leave it alone. I wish you would have never done that.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Well, if anybody knows, put that in the comments.
Please tell us in the comments. Yeah. And also, there was a sequel that Richard O'Brien made. It did not fare well. Okay,
I did hear about that
because it didn't have Susan Sarandon. It didn't have Barry Bostwick.
Anybody.
It didn't have anybody in it.
It didn't have Rooster.
No.
It was a whole new cast.
Yes, it was a whole new cast.
Well, if you ain't got Rooster, what you gonna do?
What are you doing?
Well, he died.
I don't know if he was dead when the movie was.
Yeah, I don't know the timing when that sequel was supposed to happen.
Not him as the actor.
Oh, Dr. Frank-N-Furter.
Yeah.
Well, yes, you're right.
But
so
listen. Rules don't really count, though. I mean, like this is not a movie where they would have been worried about roles if they did.
And it could have been a prequel, or
I mean, they could have resurrected. I mean, come on. I mean, this
he was an alien.
Yeah,
Spoiler.
He was an alien.
I'll give you that.
well,
zap him back.
One thing is for sure, the fact that we're even concerned about how the audience might take a sequel or a remake shows like how commonly understood it is that the people that follow this movie. Yeah. Okay. So, and I forgot to mention the key cast that kind of came up organically, but Tim Curry, Susan Sarandon, and Barry Bostwick played lead in this movie. Also featured were Richard O'Brien, the writer, Patricia Quinn, Little Nell, Jonathan Adams, Peter Hinwood, Meatloaf, Charles Gray, and Hilary Farr. And so those are the people that were featured in the movie. And you know, that cast, frankly, there's for some people, just that cast list would be enough to consider this movie a classic. But today we will determine whether it is a classic from the right perspective. We'll do a recap, we'll discuss the movie, and then we'll take a vote using a voting symbol that we're going to pick for this discussion. But we've got to start with intros. Kick us off, bro.
How are you going to recap this?
Oh, she'll have her way.
Yeah, it was so. Yeah.
I'm Aubrey Wright. I'm the oldest.
I'm Genia Wright. I'm the middle.
Hello. I am Brittany Wright.
We have been doing so good this season.
And she's not even the last introduction. Finish this.
I am Brittany Wright, and I am the youngest.
And I am Skylar Joyceling. And I am actually the youngest here today. Everyone, this is my daughter Skylar. She's 5 months old. I'm a mom. This is bananas. And every time I look at her, I just feel like, what? Oh my gosh. Whenever I'm like walking through the house and I'm like, Skylar, mommy's coming. I'm like, I'm mommy. What is happening? So as I mentioned at the top, y'all, we all went to go see live viewings of this movie. And so I thought, bro and sis, do you think we should start there, talk about the experience of the live viewing?
I honestly,
should we do the recap real quick?
I think
no, do the recap.
Okay.
Because I don't think we should do like a normal review of the movie. Because the movie is bad. It's that is the point. Like it's like the lady who was I guess emceeing our the showing we went to.
Yeah.
She said, "This is a bad movie. I've seen it hundreds of times. This is a very bad movie." Kind of like that's the point. So yes. I think what we should, and we all had kind of funny stories at the showings. So I think we should probably just review the experience. You know what I mean? Like we'll see if the experience was a classical experience from our perspective, because the movie is bad. I mean, like really.
Well, does a movie have to be good to be a classic? That's the question, because I mean, all of this is subjective, first of all.
Yeah.
But also, there are things that we have reviewed that we have known were maybe a little hokey, okay, or maybe they were a little simple, but we had reasons why we could consider it a classic.
But I definitely understand that, but nobody is popping in the Rocky Horror Picture Show to watch it at home. Like you're like nobody's.
Bro, I don't know.
I don't think you're right about that, bro. People. So there's a couple things with this movie. And bro, I would say that maybe what we're reviewing is the movie and the experience. Maybe it's both instead of.
I'm in.
All right. So if you're new to our podcast, you should know a couple of things. Number one, we pick a voting symbol that is tailored to the content. And number two, we do a recap, a spoiler-filled recap right at the top to make sure that everybody's able to follow the podcast and participate in the conversation, because our content is generally old and dusty, okay? So we dust it off with a little recap at the top. But first, we got to pick a voting symbol. Did you all come up with anything?
I mean, it's got to be the bustier, right?
Why do you say the bustier?
Because that is the icon. Well, typically, Janiyah gets a little meta. Brittany comes up with something right off the top. But I like to talk about the things that are iconic with the movie. And that visualization of him in the bustier is, to me, what I think about whatever somebody mentions Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah. What about you, sis? Did you come up with any potential voting symbols?
I haven't thought about it.
You're kidding.
I would say I would agree with bustier. I do think about his heels that he had on. So that is something.
The stockings.
Yeah, like almost like a leg that has right. on with heels on. Like that is what I would think about when I think about Rocky Horror Picture. This tall platform type of shoe.
Yeah. Well, I personally feel like we could go with either of those. I didn't spend any time thinking about one. I just forgot kind of. But I like those because one thing we know for sure is that members of the LGBTQIA plus community definitely identify with the film because the way that it embraces sexual liberation and androgyny. And so I think that the bustier and those shoes, I think those both contribute to that aesthetic and to those themes.
So Frank-N-Furter, it's Frank-N-Furter, right?
Dr. Frank-N-Furter.
Dr. Frank-N-Furter.
Like Frankenstein.
Dr. Frank-N-Furter.
Yeah.
So can we just say Dr. Frank-N-Furter's outfit?
I like
that.
Right. Or Dr. Frank-N-Furter.
Let's do it. Right.
Yeah. Even though they all had on the outfit in that one scene, remember?
Yeah.
They sure
were on
did.
the stage. Yeah. Okay. So at the end of this discussion, we will take a vote. And the Rocky Horror Picture Show must receive 3 of Dr. Frank-N-Furter's outfits in order to be considered a classic from the Wright perspective. If it gets 0 or 1 or 2, it will not be a classic. So let's do a quick recap here. It's going to be super quick. So a sweet Midwestern engaged couple, Brad Majors, played by Barry Bostwick, and Janet Weiss, played by Susan Sarandon, they're on their way to visit an old science professor when their car breaks down in pouring rain in the middle of nowhere. They decide to walk to an old castle that they'd passed to see if they can use a phone to call for help. They knock for a while and eventually the door opens and a butler named Riff Raff, played by Richard O'Brien, that basically looks pale and gaunt like a corpse kind of. He opens the door and he lets them in. They meet the housemaid Magenta, played by Patricia Quinn, and it turns out that they have arrived on the night that the master of the house is having a party. It's actually a conference of the Transylvanians. And the party is so raucous and the people seem so strange to Brad and Janet that they start to leave. But they don't get a chance because the master of the house enters the ballroom. His name is Dr. Frank-N-Furter, played by Tim Curry, and he is dressed in drag and explains that he is a sweet transvestite from transsexual Transylvania. He essentially stops Brad and Janet from leaving. He has them stripped down to their underwear and brought to his laboratory where he puts them on display for the convention goers. Dr. Frank then, in a very kind of like mad scientist fashion, he reveals his latest creation, which is a muscular humanoid known as Rocky Horror, played by Peter Hinwood. And it's clear that Rocky's primary function will be sex. Just then, one of Dr. Frank's deep freezers malfunctions, and a burly biker named Eddie, who's played by the musician Meatloaf, rides out on a motorcycle. Dr. Frank chases Eddie back into the deep freeze and chops him up with an axe. That night, Brad and Janet are put in separate bedrooms, and Dr. Frank tricks each of them into having sex with him. This is Janet's first time having sex, and she really enjoyed it, but she's having mixed emotions. The next day, she finds out that Dr. Frank also has sex with Brad, and then in a fit of horniness and revenge, she has sex with Rocky Horror. At some point, there's a buzz at the front gate. It's Dr. Everett Scott, played by Jonathan Adams, and he is actually Brad and Janet's old professor, the person they were going to see. Dr. Frank recognizes the professor as a federal agent investigating UFOs, and he essentially asserts that Brad and Janet are probably spies and working with the old professor. But before Dr. Frank can fully show his rage, the house staff announces that it's time for dinner. At the table, while everyone is eating beef and vegetables, the professor reveals that he actually came to the house in search of his missing nephew, Eddie, who had sent him a letter with a cryptic cry for help. We then learn that the food that they are eating is actually bits and pieces of Eddie, whose remains are encased inside the dining table. Mayhem ensues, everyone runs away, but somehow they all end up back in Dr. Frank's lab where he flicks a switch on the wall and it turns Brad and Janet and Rocky and the professor to stone. And he has each of their bodies put on a stage, and then he thaws them out so they can perform a floor show that climaxes in an orgy in a pool in the middle of the stage. Before the show can finish, Riff Raff and Magenta appear. That was the butler and the maid. They appear. But now, instead of wearing the clothes of a butler and a maid, they're wearing strange uniforms and carrying laser ray guns. And they tell Dr. Frank that he failed his mission because he took things too far, and it's time to return to their home planet of Transylvania in the galaxy of transsexual. They kill Dr. Frank and Rocky and tell the humans to leave, which they do. The house then detaches from the ground like a rocket and shoots off into the sky. The end. Now, if you're thinking that perhaps you missed something because what I said didn't make any sense, you didn't miss anything.
You didn't miss anything.
The movie
actually you did a better job. Like that recap makes the movie sound better than it was.
So y'all, just to give you a sense. So when you go to a live viewing of Rocky Horror Picture Show, the movie that I just described is playing on the screens. But then what they also do is they have people acting out the movie in front of the screen, and there are props involved, and there is like a call and response, like people interacting with the movie that everyone knows who's a part of the Rocky Horror community. So they know when to yell things out.
That was definitely interesting. Like that was definitely
Talk about that, bro. Talk about your experience.
Well, first of all, I got a tidbit for you that I think Janiyah would like trivia. In particular. Yes. We went to go see it at the Plaza Theater in Atlanta, which opened in 1939 and is the longest continuously operating independent movie theater and a city landmark. So the theater itself was, has historical significance. And it was interesting because the last time we went was to go see a movie. Forgive me if I get it wrong, but I think it was called The Bank. It was one of these movies that was historically significant, and it was based on a true story. And they actually had people in the panel, like answering questions before we watched the movie.
Oh, it's called The Banker. It's a 2020 film.
Yes, The Banker.
Mm-hmm, The Banker. Yes,
The Banker. And so anyway, it was just interesting to see. Those are the only two times I've been to this theater. And it was just interesting to see the juxtaposition from like this serious, somber, not somber. It was positive, but it was just a serious, event.
Yeah, this is Anthony Mackie.
Yes.
Mia Long, Jesse Usher, and Samuel L. Jackson.
Yes.
And I'm just looking at the movie poster. This is serious.
Yeah. So
it's about two of the first African-American bankers in the United States.
But the point I'm just trying to make is it was a very serious situation the last time I went. And then to walk in this time, and it was the exact opposite of that. The narrators, the MCs were great. They were really funny. And the thing I really in life like people who set expectations. Just in life, I like setting expectations, and and she really set the expectations for what was about to happen. She was just about she even pulled up a Yelp review about somebody saying you can't hear the movie. She was like, "You're not gonna be able to hear the movie here." like that, of course not. Like this is what we're here for.
Right. And, if you're here to hear the movie, you're in the wrong place. What are you doing?
Not. That's not what we're doing here. And she was like, this is a bad movie. This is and she was just going through what you would need to do to fully enjoy the experience. And all of them were funny. You know what I mean? Like all of them were funny. So even from and they talked for like an hour before the movie even started. So yeah, from the beginning, it was a really good experience.
I am tripping right now because everything you're saying, I'm just like, this was similar. And I was in there like, oh my God, I hate my life.
Say more, sis. Say more.
I was just like, what is happening? But I don't want to stop from Aubrey talking about his experience.
I was just talking about, did I ask about how, because, well, the thing is that, like, I've always wanted to go check it out.
That's what I was going to ask, whether you had an awareness of the Rocky Horror Picture
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And so I always knew, like, it's notoriously off the hook. You know what I mean? Like it's so when I'm going in there, I'm not going in there with, like, I don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
Like, I'm like, I know it's going to be crazy. I know that people are really into this thing. And I know generally, you know, like the vibe of it. But I've never seen it. But I guess I just I was just prepared for anything. You know what I'm saying? Like I just came in, I got a nice little seat off to the side where I could, because I wanted to I wanted to observe the whole, you know, like how everybody was acting, you know, like I wanted to see the whole thing. And I had known that, because you remember, I sent you guys a couple videos.
I didn't get a chance to look at the ones you found, bro.
Yeah, so I sent you guys a couple of videos when we were about to, because in the beginning, we were talking about just like reviewing this. So I'm like, well, this is not like a, you know, pop it in and grab some popcorn type of film. Like, this is a thing that's been going on for 40 years. And to understand what they're doing, like, you got to go. So anyway, I said it was a couple videos just to give you guys a kind of it wasn't my idea to review this, but I knew I knew what we were getting into on some level. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
and so, but anyway, in those videos, they talk about how some of the sayings happened at first. And some of these, like Janelle was talking about, when they talk at the screen, they have certain call and responses that everybody knows.
Yes.
And some of those have been all the way from the beginning.
Yeah.
That they still, you know, and so I was interested to see those and see how people, how they integrated that into the movie. So it was definitely very interesting.
Yeah. And just to give an example for those who haven't seen it or haven't been a part of this experience, the two main characters are named Brad and Janet. And apparently every time Brad comes on the screen, you can call him an asshole. Okay. Every time. Anytime his name is said, if he's introducing himself, or if the criminologist says his name, anytime the name Brad is said, the whole audience goes, asshole. And then Janet, anytime her name is said, she says it, another character says it, you yell, slut. But at the top, our moderator was like, we're not slut shaming Janet, we're slut celebrating Janet. Just so we are calling her a slut, but we're celebrating. So that's just an example of what Aubrey was talking about in terms of like the whole world, the whole Rocky Horror Picture Show world knows these callbacks, you know. But apparently there is also latitude for those callbacks to constantly evolve. So in my theater, and I want to go to your experiences, but in my theater, some of the callbacks reference Joe Biden, you know, and stuff that were really recent. Yes. So it definitely, you know, it evolves.
Did they hand out anything to you all in the theater?
You know what? So let me tell y'all about my experience then. Okay, let's segue to my experience. We definitely had available for purchase this. Okay, a little prop bag. Okay. And just to give you all a sense of the props that can go along with the show and generally go along with the show, there's rice, because at the beginning of the film, there's a wedding taking place. People throw rice. There's newspapers. When Brad and Janet are caught in the storm, Janet covers her head with a newspaper.
Now, what did they do? So the newspapers were for sale.
Yeah. Well, they sold this little packet, right? And it has in it a newspaper, you know, let's see. It has a newspaper in it that everybody just kind of unfolded and put over their heads.
Did they spray the water?
They sprayed water when it was raining, and people put the newspapers over their heads.
But they just handed out the newspapers to us, and I liked it because they were like, "You're going to need this," you know. And I was like,
and it was a lot of water. I don't know. We got wet. Did they have a lot of water?
It was definitely enough that there was that it was. I wasn't wet. Like they didn't overdo anything, but it was like, you're going to need this. And then when that scene came on, when they're running through the rain, and they put the newspapers, it was like, oh, okay, this was for. And then they were all in the aisles with the squirt bottles, like spraying everybody. And yeah, so that was funny. That was funny because I figured, I was like, whatever they need this paper for, I guess it's, but I'm saying but
they said they just handed them out in yours. Yeah, no, this was a kit and it was like $5.
Yeah.
There's also, people have flashlights because there's a scene where there's a song called "There's a Light." Okay. And people use flashlights during that scene. There's rubber gloves. We did get a rubber glove. Okay. And that's used when Dr. Frank-N-Furter first reveals his creation. Okay. You get to snap your gloves. Noisemakers, which was in our little packet. That's a part of that same moment where Dr. Frank-N-Furter is, revealing his creation. There could be confetti at the end of the Charles Atlas song, toilet paper when Dr. Scott enters the lab and Brad cries out, "Great Scott." There's a party hat for at the dinner table when Frank puts on a party hat.
Yo, that's
party
crazy.
Hat. And then there's a bell during the song "Planet Schmanet Janet." And then there's a playing card. Everybody got a playing card during the song "I'm Going Home." And there's a line in the song where it says, "Cards for sorrow, cards for pain." So again, people who go to see this show, and there are people who go every week, you all. This is what you doing on Saturday? I'm going to Rocky Horror Picture Show. Okay. And how do I know that bit of intel? Well, I'm glad you asked. Okay. Because when I went, I went and I didn't mean to do it, but I had apparently picked the theater where the official New York City Rocky Horror Picture Show cast was performing. And this cast has been around and, obviously evolving cast members, but for 50 years.
What?
Right. Wow. Right. So they have this thing down pat. Okay.
So you got a tidbit too. You got some tidbits about your theater.
Oh, I got a tidbit. Okay. And my theater is called Angelica East. Okay. Now that cast, though, they travel. So the cast is at many theaters. Okay. So they aren't necessarily only associated with that theater. But at the top of the experience, and mind you, I'm there for the podcast, for the people, for you all. Okay. And so I'm ready to be super present. I've got my little notepad out to take notes. I'm in it. Okay. I bought a little packet coming in. I'm ready to go. And they ask at the top for volunteers, right? They were like, stand up. If you, they said, everybody stand up. And they said, sit down if you've seen the Rocky Horror Picture Show 100 times. Some people
they did it. Yeah. They did
sit down if you've seen it 5 times. People sit down. And so people who have never seen it are left standing. And they said, what do we call these people? And everybody's like, virgin. So you're a Rocky Horror Picture Show virgin, right? And of the virgins, they asked for volunteers. And you all, I think something just came upon to me. I don't remember making
that has been upon you since we known you.
Yeah. I don't remember making the decision, but I found myself running to the front of the theater. Me, I'll do it. Okay. And here's what y'all need to know. Of the 4 people that were up there, I was the only one in a sweatshirt and yoga pants. Everybody else was dressed in bustiers and leather and, just all manner of very Transylvanian, attire.
Yeah.
And so so then they made us do a contest of doing faking an orgasm on stage. At to talk. What is your name? And I said, Pat Smith. All I could think was, what if some of my client organization staff are here? You know,
I am normally a volunteer in virtually every scenario, but this is one where I realized I'm not volunteering because I don't know what's about to happen, but I
regretted it immediately. I was standing up there like, what have I done? And I was so happy that it was just faking an orgasm, because afterwards I read online that sometimes people are asked to like imitate sex acts. It can be all sorts of things. So we actually got a relatively mild one. And I wonder if they did that for me, because they could tell I was out the box.
They might have, because when you're there and you are a visitor, it's pretty clear.
Yeah.
And nobody's negative or anything like that, but it's like,
it's almost like, we'll see you next year. You'll be ready. You'll be ready next year.
Right. Well, yeah, I think that is also the reason why I won the contest. And it was audience applause to select the winner. Okay.
Right,
and I won by a landslide. And I know it was because everybody did fine. Everybody basically was nobody's fake orgasm was better than anybody else's. Yeah. But I think they just picked mine because, again, I'm there in a turban with a knot on the top of my head. They were like, a green sweatshirt from Target and some yoga pants from Old Navy, looking like a person going to a movie at midnight on Saturday. So, and so what did I win? A chance to be in the show.
You got to be in the show.
I got to be in the show. And so I was in at the very beginning where they're at the wedding and someone tosses. I essentially was the bride in the very first scene. Gotcha. And so I got to like walk out as if I had just gotten married, and I got to toss a bouquet, you know, and then I got applause from the audience.
That's dope. That's fun.
So yeah, y'all, my experience, again, it was polished because this is a seasoned cast. So that, and it's called shadow acting. Y'all, they did a really good job. They when I tell you the costumes were tight, their portrayals were really tight. They mouthed the whole movie. And
everything was on point. I'm just thinking, how many times did y'all do this? Like,
so I was backstage and I told them that I was there on behalf of the Wright Perspective Podcast, and I wanted to ask a few questions. The whole group deferred to this one guy who was their director. Okay. He had apparently been directing for 7 years. And he talked about, I said, how often do you all do this? He said, at least twice a week all year. He said, and around Halloween, it's every day. And I said, how do you all get paid? Is this like a nonprofit central foundation? Right? Volunteers.
That's crazy. And that's the thing.
And I said, well, who paid for your costumes? They're like, we buy our own costumes.
Yep.
And these costumes were great.
Yeah.
That's what y'all need to know. So this is a commitment that these people have to this.
Wow.
Did they have all the props?
They had every prop.
Yeah, because like they were bringing out like stuff and I'm like, and you think, and it was good. It was like stuff that mimicked the movie.
It was good, but also like intentionally janky.
Yeah,
too. But it was good. But it was like, so like, for example, when the wheelchair guy came out, the guy came out holding a folding chair. and he ran down the aisle saying, suspend your disbelief, suspend your disbelief, suspend your disbelief. This is the wheelchair. This is the wheelchair. This is the wheelchair. And he gets to the front and sits down in the folding chair. So it was tight, but it was janky on purpose, kind of.
Yeah.
So, but sis, what about you? What was your experience like?
You all, let me first say, I think I need to preface this by saying I've never seen the Rocky Horror Picture Show before.
Me neither.
And I think that for me, I should not have gone to the theater before seeing the movie. Mm-hmm. I knew that there would be like, people having a good time because this is what it is. But I, in my mind, thought that it would be an organized good time. The show was horrible. And it wasn't horrible in the way like you all are talking, like him. That sounds to me so funny, him running down the aisle.
Right.
You know, you're walking in, they're giving you newspaper. You don't really know why.
Right.
It's like, I'm like, oh my God, all this sounds amazing. It was horrible to the point. I'm not telling y'all what theater I went to, and I definitely do not know the cast, and I did not care to know any of the facts. Like, it just wasn't good.
Oh my God.
I was just like, what is happening right now? So I get in there, you see some people dressed up, not a ton. I did not know that they were selling any bags. Like, there was no one that told me. So for someone like me, I had no expectation for that. And so when I'm in there,
so they were selling bags at your.
They were,
okay,
but I didn't know.
Okay.
When you saw all like the side where when you first come in and there was the table set up, it seemed like, you know, these are people buying stuff like the program or something like that. Like they're buying those keepsakes. And I'm like, oh, okay. I wasn't thinking that I needed a bag with props in it. I did not know. There was like nobody telling you that. Like, so like, okay.
Yeah, this must have been like a group of friends or something. It doesn't seem like a dedicated cast or a dedicated theater space for this.
Right. It couldn't have been, because even with the staff, like it just seemed like regular staff. Because let me tell y'all, like Pittsburgh we have a very robust theater scene. So my expectations were really high. Like I was just like, oh, this is going to be great. Like, and it was terrible. Like, so you go in and first of all, now, and also I didn't realize who this person was until the movie came on, but the Bostwick guy, the main character, he was there. And so I was like, when I realized who it was, I said, oh,
wait, sis, the actor, Barry Bostwick,
yes,
he was there?
He was there. He was there. So it was
Barry Bostwick was there?
He was there. And so it was just kind of like, okay, like this.
Who did he play?
He was the main Brad.
He was there?
He was there.
That's something. And it was still a terrible show.
That's something for the cast to not be that they were able to get him there, but they also weren't good.
And so, but my concern is, were they not good? Because my expectations, because when you're telling me like the cast, their costumes were on point, these look like some people that went to, I don't know, a swap meet and got some lingerie. Like, their wigs didn't look nice.
It wasn't like that.
They didn't look, some of their stuff didn't fit. Some people weren't even in burlesque clothes. And I was just like, what is happening right now? And then even the people like on the movie that were the people who were the spectators, and they had the glasses and the hats on, and they were dressed in suits and all that different stuff. They didn't even have that on. So I was just like, what is happening right now? And so it started off kind of funny. The girl that was doing the hosting and telling us everything, and basically being like, this show is going to be crass. If you are here for something else, give up. Yeah. But there were certain things that I was just like, okay, I get crass, but what's happening right now?
What?
Like, did they have dildos on your stage?
The only time there were dildos was when they were doing the scene of the creation of the humanoid man, and they were basically on stage trying to create the effect of being in a lab.
Okay.
They had dildos coming down from like a pole on the ceiling. And kind of like,
that to me would make sense. Some people just randomly had these long ass dildos. I was like, what is happening right now? And so I want to be like, oh, they had us all stand up, but even that wasn't organized, because eventually you could see some of us looking at each other like, do we sit down right now? Like, I don't, because it didn't get to a place where it was like, oh, if you've never seen it or something like that. But until she said it, I was like, oh, so you meant to say 0 times? So, because I should still be standing, but I'm not, because I didn't know. Right. And so then of course, eventually after like 45 minutes, because it started late, and then and then they did all their introductions, and I took about 45 minutes. Bostwick came out there. He did a whole speech, which kind of was like, that's enough. Did they pay you to do like 10 minutes? Because no, thank you.
Well, what did he say? What did he say?
What was he talking about?
He was talking about the movie and basically just saying celebrate yourself, celebrate individuality, celebrate love, celebrate, just being free. So I'm not going to say like his speech was annoying, but I think I was beginning to become annoyed because I was like, what is happening right now? Someone, can I just get a note? Because I don't even know if it's in here what I'm supposed to be. And I just was looking. So he said his speech. It was when I finally realized who he was. I said, oh, wow, that's awesome. So immediately I'm thinking to myself, well, if he's here, this is about to be like top notch. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And this is shocking my mind.
I was just like, and some of the people, it was more so of a, let me say this. When you said that they got their own costumes, you were surprised. When you say that, I'm like, I'm not surprised. I said, this looks like
they look like you got your own costume.
Look like they have their own costumes. I was like, what is happening right now? And then as soon as the movie started, people were screaming in the back, and I was just like, wait, okay, that's part of the movie. And then all of a sudden, I started seeing people pull out stuff, and I was like, wait, what are these little prop bags? What is this? I was like, I didn't even know. And so I saw 4 women. One got up, and I heard her say something about the bathroom. She never came back. 3 more got up, and it just looked like they got their stuff. Like, we're not even going to pretend. We finna go. And how you all were talking about like stuff happening and people running through and people handing you stuff. The ushers that let us in the door were sitting down on the stairs beside me. I was like, what is going on?
Sis, your experience is so different.
I was just
mine.
Like, this is, and then the movie was playing, and then even them mouthing it, they were not doing a good job.
Okay.
I was like,
see, my people had that thing memorized. They had that thing memorized.
It was not any of that. And so eventually, when I was really getting frustrated, because then I just said to myself, I said, well, Britt, just stay. Like, you pay money, just stay, see it through, whatever. The movie is not long. Y'all, I had to use the restroom, and I had a conversation with myself, and I called Genia, and she didn't pick up. I said, Genia, because I was going to give Genia the opportunity to tell me, should I go back to my seat or should I go home? And I didn't answer. So I went home. Yeah. Crazy part. When you
needed somebody to talk you into staying. That's how bad
I just couldn't do it. And then it was crazy because I walked down the stairs, and there were, in the theaters, which I'm sure this is like mini theaters, there are couches outside the bathrooms. And there were like 2 or 3 people sitting on the couches playing on their cell phones, looking like they were just waiting for whoever is watching this show to get out of it. As I'm leaving, I see, because you have to go all the way downstairs, so I'm coming up, so I'm kind of towards the back of the theater. I'm seeing people walking out the door, and people are walking out with me. And then even after I leave, there are people coming out after me. And I'm just like, so I don't think that one of 2 things was happening. Either they were just not very good, or there were not proper expectations set up. And I don't think that they maybe, or a third thing, maybe they don't have that outside support, right? So it was just that crew that was on the stage. So then the whole, people who are volunteering to work at the theater are not, into it. And that was another thing. Like, even when I walked outside the restroom, the entire, theater, of course, they're all dressed up. Now, I don't know how the individuals and ushers were for y'all, but for us, they were just in regular theater attire. They had on their red blazers. They had on their black pants, like that. They had on regular.
My larger theater was not in on it because they had other movies playing.
No,
mine was just Rocky
and
Horror.
And it wasn't a movie theater for me. It was a regular theater, like a stage theater.
Oh, so, that's also something that was probably different. You know what I mean?
It set my expectations up. I'm like, okay, this is happening in one of our major theaters. Like, okay, cool. They weren't dressed up. And even when I came out to use the bathroom, like, everybody was on their cell phone. All of the ushers were just like sitting down on their phone. Security, because the show was happening, and it was just I just left. I was just like, this is not good. if it wasn't for the two ladies sitting beside me, which I don't know if they'll ever see this podcast, one of the ladies gave me a prop out of her bag. She was like, here, you can have this highlighter and I'll use this. I was like, no, that's okay. She was like, here. It was a glow stick. And I was like, okay. I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
Like, I have to.
Whoa.
And everybody in our theater was dressed up. Like walking in, because I just had, obviously I'm just, I got on the button up and jeans. Like, I'm just
I was clearly out of place.
Clearly.
I mean, just in line to walk in, that audience was dressed to the T. They were dressed to the T.
Everybody was dressed.
Well, sis, I want to share a reaction to your experience. Like, part of it is like, I'm so disappointed that you didn't get to have the organized experience. I'm also shocked because I remember, and y'all tell me if you remember this, there was a theater on the campus of University of Pittsburgh that showed the Rocky Horror Picture Show year round. Do you all remember this growing up? It was down the street from where the Originals is on Forbes. And I would see it multiple times a week.
It's vaguely coming back. Now that you said that,
you know what? It's near where the Primanti brothers
like
currently
a Viking
is on Forbes.
type of look, a Viking situation. Like it looked really rustic type of situation. Yes. I remember that building. I don't remember Rocky Horror Picture Show, but I remember that building.
Yes, that was it. That was it. And I remember people dressed up. That was my initial exposure to the Rocky Horror Picture Show, was like, what is that? And it's these people having this fanatical experience about this movie. And that was growing up in Pittsburgh. So sis, I expected you to have, to your point about about Pittsburgh having a sophisticated theater scene, I expected you to have a show like, because I know that the people I was seeing in New York, they were probably actors. You know what I mean? We have actors everywhere around here.
Absolutely.
And that's probably also the reason why they were so, in terms of their wigs and their costumes, they had put the effort in.
Yeah, I guess that's an Atlanta thing too. I guess
they were
theater
like a ragtag group of friends that they were like, oh, y'all, we got a show tomorrow. Let's watch a movie tonight so we can kind of know the lines.
Yeah, y'all know my cousin is Barry Bostwick.
Right. Like, I'm just like, what is happening right now? And it makes me feel bad because I didn't feel excited when I even realized it was him. I was more impressed, but I wasn't excited because I'm like, y'all, what is happening here? Like, and I'm pretty sure it's maybe there was other people that went and maybe they felt a different way, but it was just for me. At some point, the yelling in the audience, like a lot of people weren't even saying things that were funny, and I was just like, I wanted to say, do you have a problem? Is there like, do you need to hush? Because I think you should. Like, it wasn't even funny stuff. Most people weren't like laughing at some of the stuff people were yelling out. Now, there, of course, was the whole, asshole, slut, that thing. And so, again, I was like, Brittany, this is your fault. Girl, you should have watched this movie before you came up in here. But what my mind expected was people imitating the movie, or during the actual dance scenes, they came out. They were going to do the dance scenes and stuff like that. It was not like that. It looked like it could have been at somebody's house, like people like having a good time and be like, let's act out the movie.
That's how it felt.
Like that. That's how it felt.
You talked about the dancing. What was that first big dance? What's it called?
Time Warp?
Huh?
Let's do the time warp.
Yeah, the time warp.
Yeah.
Did they dance? Did the whole theater dance the time warp?
So people that understood what was happening stood up. At that point, I was like, I don't even care what's happening right now. I was waiting for time warp.
Yes.
When that time warp came on, it drained the entire theater into the aisles, and like even that, I really felt like an observer. Like I felt like I didn't want to mess it up. You know what I mean? Like I just like, what did y'all do? But like everybody got into the aisles and they were doing that thing. And they just looked like they were having that was a fun moment. to me. Like that was a fun moment.
That is now nobody bled into any owls.
Oh man, they did the time warp in my theater. But the guy on the screen. So I didn't say it in the recap, y'all, but in the movie, there is a person, and it's the character that Aubrey is dressed as. Okay. There's a character that's actually, he's like a criminologist. He's an expert. His name is Charles Gray. And throughout the movie, he's like a narrator, kind of.
Yeah.
You know, and it's strange though, because he's narrating, but not really, because he just pops in a couple of times and like almost talks about what's happening. He actually says what the steps are for the time warp. And so I was able to do it, I guess is what I'm saying, because the movie helped you to know how to do it.
Oh yeah. And I participated in I did, as much as I could, but like it was clearly a moment that everybody was waiting for. Like, I mean, they got in and everybody was, singing and stuff like that. And that was I think that was my favorite part of.
Well, bro, you just gave us a great segue to, let's now talk about the movie itself a little bit.
Yeah. Genia, before we got on, we stopped this conversation, but she was going to ask me about, what is the criminologist even doing? Like, because he seems so random. And for me, it's like, this movie is clearly just off, like I didn't get a feeling that they were trying to be serious at all. And so I got kind of the feeling that it was like, yeah, we'll do this, and then there will be a narrator. Like it was almost like whatever, you know what I'm saying? So it didn't strike me when I was watching the movie. And the funny thing that was interesting, the interesting thing about it is that I was actually able to follow along on the plot, because I didn't think I was going to be able to, with all this craziness going on, I was thinking, well, there's no way I'm going to know what's happening in this movie, because you can't even really hear it. But midway through, I'm like, I actually know what's going on. Like, this is crazy. Like, with all of this happening, I still know what's going on. But what I will tell you is nothing in that movie struck me as something that people were trying to make a serious movie.
Okay, bro. I feel like you just, trivia time.
Trivia,
okay.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
You just set me up perfectly to share this quote I wrote down. Okay. And it's probably 99% correct. I was typing fast,
right?
But I watched a behind the scenes for the movie. Okay. And, on that behind the scenes, you hear a lot from Richard O'Brien, who was the writer of the original stage play that was the basis for the movie. And then, of course, he was also a writer for the movie. And here's what he has to say about the creation of Rocky Horror Picture Show. It started as a way for me to spend winter evenings when I was an out-of-work actor. It started to become a reality when I showed it to a director, meaning the script, that I was next employed with. It was the very first thing I've ever written, and I didn't even see it as writing, really. To me, it was just like doing a crossword puzzle or painting a picture or making a collage. I just wrote some songs, which I liked, and I wrote some gags I thought were funny. I put in some B-movie dialogue and B-movie situations, and I was just having a ball.
And that is how it feels.
He was not, in its original form, it was not something that was ever meant to be excellent. It was meant to be what it turned out to be. Yeah. And so that's what it was on stage. And they talk about wanting to keep that energy as it translated to the screen. And now here's the really interesting bit of trivia I was trying to build toward. So when it was finally going to be made into a big screen movie, okay, the producers were offered 2 budgets by the movie house. They would have been able to have a large budget if they had casted musicians of the time that were popular, or they could have a more modest budget and keep the cast that they had in the London stage play. And the producers opted to keep the stage play cast for the most part.
Wow.
And they took the lower budget. And so there were a lot of things in the movie that were even more janky than they might have been.
Because of that, right.
But it was because they made the choice to try to keep the original energy from the original production.
I love that.
Susan Sarandon and Barry Bostwick, of course, were additions, okay, because they're American. They were the American edition. But that staff was the rest of the rest of the cast was from the original London production, including Tim Curry.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting and wonderful?
That is very interesting. And a great build-up, sis. I was like hanging on every word.
I know, it was interesting.
So was that was Tim Curry, was that his introduction to like American theater?
It was his first movie.
Wow.
Ever. It was his first movie. And it was his first film. And I'll give you an example of something that was even more jankier than they thought it was going to be. So at the end, when the house takes off, right, and it shoots up like a rocket, they had wanted to actually make a model. They didn't have enough money to even make a model of the mansion. Okay. So they ended up just printing a picture of the house on a cardboard cutout. Richard O'Brien in the behind the scenes, he was like, if you look pretty closely in the movie, you can see the house is still sitting there when the cardboard cutout gets lifted away. He was like, you can see the house is still sitting there.
In my mind, I was like, oh, the foundation stayed. The whole house went. That is hilarious.
That is hilarious. And see,
and bro, I have to tell you, when you said that it is notoriously known as a bad movie, it made me feel better after I had got to watch it. I was like, uh-oh. I was just like, well,
that's why I didn't know, because like I didn't know how we could review a movie that is known like it's a bad movie. That's what it is. You know what I mean? Like,
but it's a bad movie on purpose.
Like nobody will argue that, because it's like all the singing is bad, pretty much. The songs are fun.
The singing was bad?
No.
I did.
I enjoyed the songs, and
I enjoyed the songs, but it wasn't from the place of enjoyment that we normally would watch a musical. Like it wasn't those kind of. It was fun. It was fun.
But bro, even Tim Curry, I gotta tell you, that Tim Curry, and I was already a fan of his just from Annie, you know, and other little things I've seen him in. But I thought his performance was masterful. I thought he was excellent.
No,
I mean, the way he embodied that character.
I'm not taking away. I'm not taking away from that at all.
His singing, bro, but his voice.
But let me be clear. I'm not taking away from any of that, and he is a phenomenal performer as
so good
always. What I'm saying is, I was in it's a different thing. How this was presented is all I'm saying. It's like the way he was singing in the character more than singing. You know what I'm saying? Like
I see what you mean.
You know, like he was in and it was, please don't. I feel like they knew what they were going to do and they knocked it out of the park. But there's no question that the movie is bad and that the songs are just what they are. They're supposed to be campy and fun. And,
yes.
You know what I'm
Yes,
saying?
they were.
And that's what they are. They're not, even though he was within that character doing a good vocal performance, to me, what's up front is the character. It's like how he's acting, and you know what, he wouldn't sound like that if he was just singing normally. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he was also putting that character into the, well, for my, you know, how it looked to me anyway.
And sis, I want to get your opinion on the singing, but before that, I want to say Tim Curry told an interviewer on Fresh Air, which is a radio show, that Tim Curry has said that in the original play, he started out playing Dr. Frank-N-Furter with a German accent, but he changed that when he heard a woman on a bus speaking in a highly exaggerated English accent that reminded him of Queen Elizabeth II. And he later combined that with elements of his mother's telephone voice to create Dr. Frank-N-Furter's speaking voice. So, bro, when you were talking about the fact that he's like,
Yes,
in a character
and it's and I think
perspective, ton of intention.
Yeah, and that's why there would be no sequel you could really do without, like, that was the
you
movie.
need that cast. Yeah.
Like, and at very least him, you know what I mean? But
sis, what did you think of the music?
I just enjoyed Tim Curry. It was when I was at the theater and I saw Dr. Frank-N-Furter come across the stage.
Yeah, you text us.
I was like, that's Rooster. That's the first thing I said, because I did not know he was in the movie.
Yes.
Like, oh my gosh, look at Rooster. And then the other thing I looked up, I was like, wait, did this movie come out? I said, is this pre-Annie? And that's when I said, oh wow, this movie is really, I said, I wonder how it was received during the time it came out. Because it's I guess the political correct word would be forward. It's very forward.
Well, if somebody would have watched the videos I sent.
What videos?
Well, bro, if you have a tidbit, just share it. Okay. You
send videos?
You can't make people feel bad when they don't watch your videos. I have to work through it every episode.
Well, Janai, you send 40,000 videos for every episode. So
wait, y'all sent videos? Y'all don't.
I sent you videos. It was a while ago that when we first.
Oh,
I forgot to put them. I remember you sending them.
Are you talking about? But yeah, I didn't, and I think I don't like to do a lot of research before stuff. Aubrey and Janai are different in that way. I kind of want to just experience it. But yeah, so when he came across the screen, I was happy. So at any rate,
normally, honestly, Britt, I'm more like that.
Yeah.
It's just in this situation, I felt it was necessary because, like, we were talking about, like, reviewing it, like just watching it on Google, or however we normally watch it, and I was just trying to say, like, that's what this is.
That we had to be immersed in the experience.
Well, I'm just saying, if we're going to be reviewing what this is, you don't. Well, Janai said we don't know, but you don't hear a lot of people saying, "Oh yeah, let's pop in Rocky Horror," you know what I mean, picture show at home. You know what I mean? So it was more just showing, like, it's about to be crazy.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Let's also talk a little bit, and we need to wrap soon. Let's talk a little bit, just really quickly, about the acting performances. I feel like we've talked about the story. It's not great. We've talked about now the singing. Good, but hokey, right? What about the actual acting performances? How did you all feel about the way the actors were? Because this was also very early in Barry Bostwick and Susan Sarandon's careers. One more quick bit. I
wonder how she feels about it now.
Well, it's funny you should ask, bro. So the thing about it is their experience was really strange on set. They actually both were sick. Bostwick had a cold. Susan Sarandon was actually diagnosed with pneumonia while on set, because they did filming between October through December in Bray, near Windsor, England. So it was very wet. It was raining all the time. They were wet all the time. They were in the house that they were using for the filming actually didn't have a good roof. And so they were just wet and sick for the whole filming process. They had one warm room in the entire castle that they had rented, and it was filled with space heaters. The room eventually caught fire. Anyway, so it was a dramatic, hard filming process also. And so Susan Sarandon, sometimes she doesn't want to comment on it, apparently, but she does celebrate and respect the legacy. And now, there are a couple of times where she talked about being proud of it and the legacy of it. But she's the one that they have said has had a mixed reaction to the legacy of her participation.
I mean, I would feel mixed too if someone's calling me a slut every time I'm on.
Well, I was definitely shocked. Like, I was shocked to see her on. I was like, wow, you know what I mean? Like,
she's so young too.
And it was just because when you think about her as an actor, it's definitely not that. You know what I mean? So it was something. But I'll tell you that I think I really felt like everybody knew the assignment and everybody knew what I don't think anybody was taking it, from what it looked like, super seriously. Like they weren't trying to, win a award or something. It's like, yo, this is what we're doing. And it just seemed like, and to me, in that way, they all knocked it out the park in the sense of they all knew the assignment. So that's how I feel.
Sis, you want to say a quick minute on your reactions to the actual acting performances, and then we can go to the vote.
Yeah.
I thought that everyone did a great job. I enjoyed the movie for what it was. The only thing that got on my nerves a little bit was how is Rocky a new human, but he already knows how to speak English.
Yeah. See, you started thinking.
Funny.
You started thinking. But
then sometimes he doesn't.
Look, you obviously don't know how science
the same
works.
part of your brain.
Okay, you don't understand science because that is what happens when you make a humanoid. Okay,
look, that's the same part of your brain. It's like, we couldn't do a sequel because he died. Like that. That's the logical, reasonable part of your brain. You gotta let that go.
Yeah,
let that go while you're watching it.
But no, I enjoyed, in terms of the singing and the acting, that I think everybody did a good job.
Yeah. And me too, y'all. I thought the actors, I appreciate what you said, bro, that they knew the assignment. And I think that's right. I think they showed up in the way that they were meant to. Well, that's why it makes voting on this movie pretty tricky. It's a bad movie with an enjoyable live experience with good portrayals, catchy music, and a whack storyline, and poor graphics, and
yeah, those lasers at the end,
hilarious.
So funny.
So like, and that gun, like, what was that?
Horrible.
What was happening?
It was so horrible. It was so horrible. But I'll say this, for me, it's definitely a classic experience. I couldn't see myself going again. The only way I would go again is if there was somebody who wanted to see it. I could go with somebody who was going for the first time. I could do that. But the thing I'll say about this, if you are considering going to this and you have, and this is what I would say to them, like if you have sensibilities and all that kind of stuff, like this is just not the environment that you should be going to, because it's off the chain. And now it wasn't, my experience wasn't as off the chain as Brittany's, you know what I mean? But it was off the hook though. It's a very free, just environment where people are just doing them. You know what I mean? And so you never know what that's going to entail. And so I wouldn't go with, I would just explain to the person like, look, if we're going to go, all right, just know we don't know what's about to happen. So if you could, but in that context, it's a classic thing. Because one thing I can tell you is this. If they had this for hood movies or for like a hood movie, like if it was like a New Jack City thing where I could go dressed as Nino Brown and I could scream at the screen during my favorite scenes.
Okay, that's our business idea.
I would be
doing
there.
It. Don't sell our idea. We're doing it.
I would be there every week, because like to be able to just go and to be like, like I was just sitting there thinking like, I get it. Because if it was a movie I identified with like this would be fun. But it's like one of those things you can't force to happen. It just has to happen somehow, but for me, it was definitely a classic experience. So it definitely gets my
Dr.
Frank-N-Furter outfit.
Well, I'm going to tell y'all this. This movie was not, I was very clear that this movie was not going to be a classic. Even in celebrating that I did have like I wouldn't say a good time, but like a wacky time. I was not going to make this movie a classic. I was very clear on that until literally this morning when I was getting dressed in my costume. Y'all, when I was putting on the eyelashes and putting on a wig, which again, I've never worn eyelashes before. I mean, me, Genia Wright, in a red gigantic wig like this, what's happening? And I've got this maid costume on. What in the world? My little baby daughter's looking at me like, who are you right now? And I'm looking back at her like, I don't know, girl.
I'm Magenta girl. Hello, get with it.
So, I got to tell you all, it was when I got in on the fun of it this morning that I was like, oh, I see now. Because again, you can tell from the comments I've made that I respect this movie and I respect the experience, and I certainly salute those fanatics. I mean, I don't have anything that I'm a fan of to this degree. I'm not even a person like follows the sports team.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't have stuff that I rally behind like this. So I always just respect it when I see it, So I had a respect, but today I got in on the fun, and now I get it. If I had something that made me want to do this every week because I cared about it that much, that would really be special. And so for that reason, I'm going to make it a classic for the movie world, but not for my own experience. I'm going to make it a classic. It's going to get my Dr. Frank-N-Furter out.
And Genia, that's exactly how I feel. That's exactly how I feel.
What do you think, sis?
It does not get my Dr. Frank-N-Furter costume. And that's it.
And that's that.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, you all, I got to tell you, I'm not surprised that this movie is not a classic from the Wright perspective. Love you, bro and sis. Thank you all for tuning in. Bye.
Bye. Love y'all.